As a newly qualified nurse, I've experienced a lot of elderly care and will do for the rest of my career. I think it's something like, I don't know if this is correct, but something like 85% of the patients that come into the NHS facilities or any NHS facility will be over 65. So I think, the biggest struggle is obviously two things: time and finance. Healthcare internationally has moved away from treating people's illness, and the theory is that you try and treat people holistically. So you look at their social needs, their health needs, their emotional needs, their spiritual needs. You try and create a package for them that incorporates all of those things rather than trying to treat them as separate entities. At the end of the day, it should be an individual choice, but then the next problem is that when it comes to elderly care and vulnerable adults, they might not be necessarily in the position to make those choices. Really, ultimately, prevention is better than cure. So those decisions should have been made earlier. And I think that we live in a culture that doesn't like to talk about getting older, that doesn't like to talk about what we might need. And I think we mention it in passing, but we never organise it. But I think that people need to be educated and people need to decide what it is they want before it gets to a crisis. I don't know. Reading nursing theory and stuff like that and everything in relation to elderly care today, I think there is a huge government interest in what nurses are doing and what carers are doing, because, I think this is political now. I think the government would love a kind of scapegoat, and I'm sure the public would agree with this as well. They kind of scapegoat into nurses and caring being not caring enough, which is true because, I think that the solution to that is that we educate nurses and carers more in basic nursing care. However, the ultimate problem is that there isn't enough carers and nurses. The ultimate thing that came out of the Francis report? Chronic understaffing. You can come up with all the other things that were left out, but that was it. That was the main one. Chronic understaffing. And we constantly say nurses and carers aren't understaffed, and we say it in such a blasé way that like it's not going to cause any problems anymore, like it isn't even an issue. Like the issue is that carers aren't caring enough and carers don't realise what it is that elderly want and the elderly need. And I think people do know. I think that the government are going to have to, this is for all healthcare, be honest with the public and say it's a subsidised, it's a substandard level of care you're receiving because you're not paying private. At the moment, with the press and everything, we're just having the same conversations over and over again, and the focus is always, let's educate the carers better, let's have more legislation, red tape for people caring, blocking the view. I think that kind of the focus on it is wrong, and they're not dealing with the grassroots of the problem, which is that decisions made under crisis, it's obvious there isn't enough financial help for the elderly. I think it's heart-wrenching because the carers and nurses don't have any. We as a nation are letting elderly people down and have been for generations. And, they do it in other countries. They look after the elderly pretty well. I think that, the rule that was brought out, in order to start your training as a nurse, you have to have a year's healthcare. And that rule was brought out. That's why I was talking about scapegoating earlier, because by bringing in that law, I think that then makes the public think, well, so if they're bringing in that law, they must be very concerned about nurses not having basic care skills. I just think that was a wonderful scapegoat, because most people who go to nursing now have been healthcare assistants. Most of them are carers or are healthcare assistants who have then done an access course. At the end of the day, you need to keep your patient alive. Those basic health care needs, you might not do as a nurse because it's more important that they're breathing, that they're hydrated, that they're fed. If you don't have time, that's where personal hygiene is the bottom of the list. Drugs and food are more important. And that's awful. That's the most horrible thing you'll ever have to do and will ever have to do as a nurse. Say you're too busy to do that. No nurse should ever have to be put in that position, but they are, because we're short-staffed in every single elderly care ward. Paediatrics are never short-staffed. That's what I'm saying. They just don't have the same issues. Why? Because the funding isn't there. If you go to the trust I'm working at, if you go to any of the elderly care wards, they're always in the old buildings of the hospital. They always have the poorest equipment. They always have constant staffing issues. And then you go to see IT, you go to A&E, you swear you're in fucking NASA, like, honestly. So there's a huge cultural change there. And I don't think that healthcare providers, doctors, want it that way. I think that we have directed ourselves to those who are acutely ill and who are young. We as a nation have made that choice. Healthcare providers do not have the control you think they have. I mean, here's another contradictory, controversial thing to say. Have you ever been to Great Ormond Street? Because they have everything there, and they have enormous amounts of resources and enormous amounts of money from various things. And that money is not getting pumped into elderly care. That's a fact. You have to accept it. And for various reasons, we've made an ethical decision that children are more important and that the health of children is more important. That decision's already been made. That isn't an argument. In this culture, in this nation, we have as a nation let elderly people down. I'm not just speaking as a student nurse, or I'm speaking as a young person and as a newly qualified nurse who's about to go into care for elderly people.